Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Dominique Perrault.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. And the theme about the lecture is urban integration. And I would like to start with the National Library. And I would like to speak about the statement concerning different aspects of this project and other project. And the main part about this project is the question about the void and the presence of the void and the consistency of the void. And in fact, the history about this project is the urban design development of Paris on the east part of Paris, more or less from the center. This territory, 20 years ago, more or less, was like a brown field, like that. So, yes. And the project is a project supporting by the French President François Mitterrand to build a new building for the National Library. And this project is a little bit specific and unique in the period of François Mitterrand, because you know the Grands Travaux of François Mitterrand are most apply on historical part of the city. The Place de la Bastille with the new opera, and the Louvre for the new museum, and also different projects in the main axes of the city. But about the National Library is a little bit different because the location is on a brown field, and the project is in the middle of nowhere. And in fact, the idea is to build a huge building, very important building about the surface, 300,000 million square meters. No, 300,000 mètres carrés. And this building should create a new route for a new district. And the idea is to manage the space outside to create a huge and very generous public space, and the space inside with some reading rooms around a garden. And this ambivalence project, creating a specific condition to install a big building without the presence of a big building. Because the building, the most part of the building is included in the ground floor. And you see only 4 corners, 4 towers, and these 4 corners mark the virtual volume of the building, including in the ground floor. And this idea about the void and the presence of the void in the city, like a value, urban value, I develop also the same strategy in Berlin, just after the reunification of Berlin between the east and the west of this city. The program is a velodrome and a swimming pool, Olympic swimming pool, and the idea is to reconnect different districts. This one, this one, this one, and this one, with the presence of this huge facility and public facility. It is the same strategy with the library. Install a big void with a public space open on the districts around, and it's possible to create a movement, a dynamic, to develop the city around this kind of opportunities. In this case, the nature is around the architecture. In the case of libraries, the nature is the core, the heart of the library. But with this project, is more or less like a manifesto because the building disappear. Also, it's a political statement in a resonance in the opposition, if you want. If you compare the Olympic building built in 1936 in Berlin for the Olympic Games with the Nazi power. In this case, building disappear, it's impossible to organize a military parade on this place because we're creating an orchard with 500 apple trees and a prairie around the building. And this situation is a very contemporary statement to install huge volume like this velodrome and this kind of facility creating in the same movement an answer about function, sport function in this situation, but also an answer about the urban design. In the project of Luxembourg is not exactly the same strategy because we are not in the middle of nowhere. The history about Luxembourg and especially about the European institutional plateau with different European institutions is very interesting because the history of institutional European buildings doesn't exist because at the beginning the European department rent building. They don't want to be owner of the building. But in Luxembourg, during 30 years, or maybe more, now 40 years, they build and rebuild at the same place the institution following the increasing countries in the European community. And you have the bank, European Bank, designed by a British architect, and the Court of Justice, designed by a Belgian architect. And step by step, the European plateau changed, but Luxembourg keep at the same place the root of these two institutions, the money and the justice. And the idea for this project is to start from existing condition and to develop a huge expansion of this historical building, very fresh, but historical building. The first palace is in the center of this rectangular ring. And the second expansion is these buildings fitting like with the topography of the plateau. And we imagine it is an existing situation first, the first palace of justice, and after with the development with this building. And the third situation is like that. We keep the existing building in metal frame, metal structure, and we keep also the existing building in stone, but we introduce a very strong link, a long gallery, like a passage, connecting the existing building with the new one on around the historical Palace of Justice, and with 2 towers, and in the future 3. And this project is a transformation from one building in a part of a city, of a district, with step-by-step urban fabric appear. It is the bank, and here the expansion of the bank by a German architect, and the development of this district, changing totally the quality of the urban design on the European plateau, with tower and the palace. And we keep the structure, the metal structure of the existing palace, and we design another, like a cuisine structure around with a big peristyle, and it is the judge's ring floating above the main entrance. It is the main entrance with a large round chandelier, and you have the main audience room, very formal, but you could imagine in this project you have a lot of audience room. And now we develop step by step a density, urban density on this part of Luxembourg, with some towers. This one was the first, and Ricardo Bofill designed these 2 towers, and we designed 3 towers, and some other architects are coming to continue to develop the skyline about the European plateau. Another project is a bridge, is a pedestrian bridge, and it's an example, if you want, about the competition in Seoul. We are speaking this morning. It's in Madrid, in Spain, and it was a very ugly situation in the center of the city, because you have a river. This river is a very small river. It's not like the Hang River in Seoul or some other river in other capital, but here it's a very, very small river. But along the river, existing 2 lines highway, and the city, the mayor of Madrid, decides to change totally the quality of this space, and he developed a huge and very expensive work to put underground all highway network. And step by step, a new land appear in the center of the city, and also, step by step, the people could see and touch the water of the river. And the idea is to develop along 5 kilometers a park, urban park, with new facilities, with housing, with different components about the urban intensity. And we built a bridge, a pedestrian bridge. And the idea about this pedestrian bridge is not only to connect this side with this side, is also to create another entrance in the park. And we broke the bridge at this point, and we developed a comfortable promenade for the people to stop, because they are protected with a metal fabric, with a metal mesh, against the sun, but also against the wind. And the people, the Spanish people, gave the kick name El Salón. It is a living room. Why? Because it's possible to sit into the bridge and the children could play underneath in the park. You have a promenade in wood, and it's a very comfortable place to stop. It's not exactly a bridge, it's a real public space with a specific statue, in floating above another very attractive public space, a park along the river. Any project working about and around this idea, what is and which kind of public space I could install with the architecture. In this case, we are in Vienna, in Austria, and the concept is to develop and to promote this district with tower. This district is along the Danube River, just in front of the historical part of the city. And the idea is to creating a very strong relationship between the water and the river and the district. And we imagine an urban design plan with some new tower, with different function, housing, offices, facilities, hotel, and a mixity of function working around this artificial ground floor. The idea about these two towers, the most important, highest tower in Austria, is to develop a main gate like the main entrance of the district. Yes, you could see the skyline of the district with these two towers from the center of the city. And you have the metro line in the bridge. You have a bicycle line along the bridge, and the people and the pedestrian people could go also. And this link is very strong between this part of Vienna and the other part. And we would like to transform the quality of the side of the bank along the river and install this specific point like a main connection between the metro station and the other building and the other metro station in the center of this district. And we imagine one block, and we cut the block in two parts, and we shift the facade inside like the water surface or a mineral stone. And step by step, the project is under construction, and at this moment, we have finished the highest tower, and the grand opening becomes next year for the spring time. But in this building, you have three functions: hotel at the basement, and after offices and apartment on the top, with obviously restaurant and the sky bar. Another project in Bulgaria, Sofia, it's a competition. We won the competition about urban design. It's a Russian camp, if you want. And the Russian people left Bulgaria, and the government would like to transform this brownfield in a new district. And we try to design a global form, a silhouette, a skyline of the district. It's not the shape of the building, is the skyline of the district. Because the idea is to develop a very powerful control about the skyline of the district with a public power, and with a private power we build the building into covered by this skyline or this urban shape. And it's a very simple rule to develop together between the private investment and the public policy a partnership, private and public, to creating a new center in the city of Sofia with different attitude to about the geography, because the Russian guy organized a very flat and artificial ground floor, and we try to reinstall the original topography, and we reconnect the river underground and plant also some trees. About Fukuoka Tower, the strategy is in the center of Osaka, is to develop a very special treatment for the basement of the tower. You know, in Osaka you have an efficient network with a lot of people walking in some very long galleries underground. And the idea is to provide some space with a natural light, creating some crossroad along this kind of gallery. The metaphor about the tower is like this big trunk, especially about the quality of the envelope of the building. And the skin of the trees is very sculptural, very architectonic at the basement, and when you go up, the skin becomes very flat. And we develop more or less the same feeling about the quality of the skin with this relief and the expansion of the volume at the basement of the tower. This specific form is the consequence of these two avenues and the crossroad. We follow the design, the urban design of the avenue. The building is not autonomous and autist. The building, and especially the foot of the building, working with the urban fabric around, and with galleries, pedestrian galleries on the side. And is not innocent, and because the limit of the land is there, this kind of bench. On the left is the public part, on the right is a private part. And the owner is a life insurance company, accept the idea to give more space for the public space. And with this kind of design of the footprint, we are creating a very coherent print basement of the building with the street around. And if you see from the bottom to the top, and this big atrium is also a significant space, generous, to introduce the natural light at the bottom of the building. And this piazza underground appear like a public space into the building itself, and also it's a meeting point for the people moving quickly between the railway station and the different building with a high density spread out around the railway station. It is the density of the district and the tower. And also we try to develop more or less the same presence about this project in Seoul, but this project doesn't work because the urban planning doesn't work also. But it's the name of this project is a blade, is a losange shape, and we introduce this shape very sharp in between a lot of skyscraper, and the idea is to provide some view for the people working in this building, a very long view on the river and also on the hill, Imperial Hill of Seoul. And we try to create this kind of surface with relief on the facade to develop an optical effect and transform the presence of this building in a different, a kinetic situation. And the perception of the architecture, and especially about this very important project, is for me the statement of the project, the relationship between the concept and the context, how this kind of building could be present and in the same time it could disappear, like, for example, this museum in France. And this museum in France is an archaeological museum, and the block is there with a square, with a garden. You have three buildings, 70s, 15th century, 19th century, and we should transform these three buildings in one museum with a big extension. It is a situation, three buildings, one land, three buildings. This one, and this one. The program from the competition, the bid of the competition is to create on the north face of this building an expansion vertically. I propose to create a horizontal platform integrated in the floor and to connect horizontally these three buildings. It is the existing condition and the new one. And also we are working about some natural feeling and artificial feeling. For example, this patio is natural, and this presence of the water is natural also, but this one is a glass roof, very flat, like a water. And we merge the artificial feeling with the natural feeling. And I think this kind of relationship between natural and artificial is a real attitude to develop a comfortable situation about the contemporary cities. And with this dispositif and disposition, we keep the entrance at the same place. It is the existing entrance, but we change the topography of the road, of the street. We go to the main entrance by a slope, a smooth slope, and you have a double high, the entrance, and going into the temporary part of the exhibition of museum and the lobby for the entrance of the museum. Another theme in Paris, we are working about the post building, is a main post building in Paris. Is a piece of the patrimony. This building built at the end of the 19th century by a very famous professor of architecture, Mr. Gadet. And Gadet built only one building, this building. And this building is very interesting because you have a building in stone, but inside all structure is in metal. Now, with the email connection, the traffic of letter in paper physically decreasing, reduce. And the group, this company, the Post company, imagine with the city of Paris some new function for this historical building. First, it's necessary to open this big block in stone, very opaque and solid. It's necessary to open this block on the pattern of the district with this kind of passage, public passage. And we are creating inside some courtyard, and also we rebuilt the roof because the roof burned in 70s. And at this moment you have only a terrace with a waterproof terrace. And the idea is to protect the historical desk of the post with a relationship with the public and the post inside and outside. But we would like also to keep all metal structure and to introduce some other function, shops along the street, but also a small police facilities, a kindergarten for children, and offices above. It is a restaurant, for example. Shops and facilities, urban facilities. Offices, industrial, flat for the post treatment, and on the roof like a penthouse, a hotel. It is a model. You see the envelope in stone, absolutely stable and rigid, and inside you have the metal structure. And we protect this static system, and we change the quality of the function inside. In this meccano, it's possible to, it's very modern concept, and in this meccano it's possible to introduce another kind of design. For example, it is the lobby of this hotel and a terrace, fantastic terrace with a view on this part of Paris and the Centre Pompidou on the left, and Notre Dame, the cathedral, on the right. We respect totally the skyline, historical skyline of the city, but the intensity, urban intensity of this block change totally. Is not one function, is a mixed function with a lot of people using during the day, but also during the night, this place. Another project in the south of France is a historical city now, very famous. Albi is in the World Heritage list, including 2 years ago, with a fantastic cathedral. Is absolutely a masterpiece. And we develop a project just on the border, on the limit of the historical district, a theater, a cultural program. And the idea is to install a block, a very compact block, and we've wrapped the block in a metal fabric, like a scarf, to create some floating space in between the building itself and the district and the facade around. This building is very complex because you have a car park, public car park, and with some movies, 8 movies underground, a big theater hall, and another hall for experimentation, and a terrace on the top with restaurant. And the main idea is to create a special effect in between the facade in mesh and the glass facade protecting the theater. And a project quickly to transform a little manor on west of Paris in a small congress center. And we would like to keep the quality of the park, and we are creating a pool, a glass pool, and the feeling about this glass pool is like a water pool, like a bassin in a park. And we dig a hole and install auditorium and cafe underground and change totally the quality of the building itself. And the project disappear and appear a new landscape with a new quality, and this new landscape transform totally the presence of the building and also the quality of the style of the building, because this building is not absolutely beautiful, but for me is existing building and is like a material. and you could manipulate the existing condition like a material. In Spain, again, another proposal for a competition. It's a huge program about the culture. It is an urban situation. You have a historical city, Saint-Jacques-de-Compostelle, with a very famous cathedral for a lot of pilgrims. And you have a highway around the city and a hill on the other side. And, sorry, it is a historical city, the cathedral, the highway, and the hill with a museum. And the hill, more or less, the surface of the hill is the same surface if you compare with the historical district. It is a hill, it is a historical district, the cathedral, and the museum. And we imagine to keep the landscape and to use and manipulate the landscape or introduce the landscape like the facade of the building. And we install in the topography of the hill a huge optical instrument in glass to introduce the natural light very deeply in the soil. And along this optical instrument, we have all function with theater, galleries, library, all cultural facilities. But this volume, this with mirror, is not the entrance of the building, is the window of the building. And again, we could create a very special feelings between artificial and natural situation, because the mirror introduces the natural light into the hill, but also we could have some screen, and on the screen we could have some image to merge the virtual vision with a natural image. And in Korea, in the south of Korea, you know, Yeosu city with a very strong development of the oil company, Korean company Caltex, and this oil company would like to protect a piece of land, this hill with a small temple on the top and this highland, and to provide for the city some cultural facilities. And we imagine a promenade, and along the promenade you have the temple on the top and some other special landscape spaces with a museum like a glass fall river and some auditorium underneath with this bridge above the water, and on island another situation with a gallery. And the idea is to connect with this promenade different cultural facilities during the day and during the night also. The same idea is how is possible to use and to organize some very open and free, generous and democratic relationship between facilities and the environment. In this case, in the other case also, other situations, you have no fence, no grid, no limit. This kind of building working with a public system, with the environment. This environment is open for everybody, because this kind of architecture is not at the end a building, it's finally a landscape. Because when I say landscape, for me, is a very mixed and merged relationship between the architecture and the nature. And to conclude with this project in Seoul for Ewha University. And this project is exactly the result about this statement to build a landscape and not to build a building. That is the existing situation. It's a women university. And the first principle of the women university is a land with a fence. Is a land closed. Is not a land working with a city around. Is a land like an island. It is at this point the historical entrance, and the campus with very close, or seems to be like the campus on the east of US with a gray stone building, like in Boston, for example, because the root of this university comes from an American missionary 125 years ago. She created the first school for the emperor. And the result is now this campus with a very artificial topography, and especially for the main entrance, like a brown field. You have a car park and a surface for a training sport. But the problem is not the problem about the urban design and the architecture. The problem is now the university is open on the city. And the link between students disappear because each student follow his course and after leave the campus and go in the city. And the idea from the staff of this university is to create some specific place with facilities for students with a goal. The student should stay long time or longer time in the campus to develop some special and specific relationship between them. And we imagine to continue the design of the city, urban design of the city, between the metro station at the corner on the right to the main entrance of the university. You have a street, and we continue the street into the campus. But in the campus, this street change. It's a valley, because we don't want to build 1, 2, 3 very nice pavilions, but it's not efficient. The efficiency about the statement of this project is to create a landscape with a large scope open on the existing pavilion and existing topography. And with this movement, we rebuilt the original topography of the hill, and also we are creating a void, like a street, like a long piazza, And on this photo is very significant, this void connecting every building around. It's a paradox how a void could connect some solid building between them. That is the secret of the void, because if you could give a real physicality about the void becomes like a real material for the architecture. And the void is not a tool to separe the space or to separe different situations. The void, under control by the landscape, with the landscape and with the architecture, is a real presence of the building in the city. And to create this kind of building, first, you should dig a big hole. And if you dig a big hole, immediately you are creating some very sustainable condition, because the building is totally protected by the soil around and by this landscape above, like a coat. And finally, we get a very stable building with less energy. And also about the perception, sometimes it's a real surprise, because you could walk on the roof of this building along this garden, and after you could see, for example, the staircase or this long perspective. And this apparition, this vision sprout out in the eyes of the people is very emotional presence, and for everybody is a souvenir, and is a very intimate souvenir, because it's not necessary to explain the presence and the absence of the building. The people physically feel the presence and the absence of the building, and this emotional situation creating a specific identity about this place. And for me is the good result, the perfect result, to start from a concept very abstract, a hill with an empty space along. It's a very conceptual act, like some artists from the contemporary art, the hand art, for example. It's a very conceptual. You could imagine this concept like a global approach, but with the context and the relationship between this concept and the specificity of the context, we are creating an identity very unique at this place and only for this place. And I think it is a secret about the architecture, how the architecture could transform the conceptual idea in a physical emotion. And this physical emotion is absolutely understanding by everybody. It's not necessary to have an architectural culture to feel the architecture. If the architecture is in a real, or provide a real specific perception, very special, very unique, immediately for the people is a route, is a mark, is a track, is an identity for a district, and is a social value, a cultural value, an aesthetic value, and finally is a mark of the humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we need to turn on the light. Okay, well, it was a very interesting and wonderful travel around the world following Mr. Dominique Perrault's projects. It is very good. And I thank you very much because you served as a chair of the jury from the early in the morning and you're doing the ending lecture today. You must be very tired, but it was a very energetic and impressive lecture. 그 강연이 다 끝났고요. 이제 질문을 좀 받도록 하겠습니다. Now, we can ask some questions to Mr. Dominique Perrault. Well, considering that we have a welcome cocktail party at 7:30 in this building tonight, it was a very perfect finishing time in the very right kind of time, in Helios terms, yeah? Right kind of time. Okay, any questions from the floor? While you are thinking, I'd like to ask this question. Well, we reviewed many projects, and some are actually, coming out of the ground, very much prominent, visible, conspicuous. But at the same time, you got many projects that is going underground, which is more or less invisible. So you want your architecture to be visible or invisible. Are you using those two different strategies? So what is your idea about architecture? Visible, invisible?
I think I think all is possible. It's because we should consider the urban fabric not like a tissue in 2D, but like a substance in 3D. And we change the relationship very traditional between the people walking in the city along the street with some building above. I think now, and we know all part on the planet. It's a new situation for the humanity, psychologically. Before it was possible to make some discover a part of the planet. But now we know all. It's finished. We are in a finished world. It's totally different. And we have no solution. Only the solution to respect and protect the planet, but not with a romantic attitude, but with a conceptual attitude. And we develop the density, for example, of the city by an underground network. Why not? We could make also build the city on the city to add some levels on the existing skyline. We could imagine other strategy, but all is possible. Fields are totally open because the architecture is died. Finally, is a chance for us, because the architecture of sorry, in English it's too complex to explain concept, but an artist in the middle of the 20th century said, "Art is dead," and art doesn't disappear. Art are very strong at this moment. But the architects are very timid. They have not the courage to say the architecture is dead. We should open the eyes and open the field. And if we stay on the architecture field with the door, the window, the roof, in front of, behind, on the side, we build some walls, and walls separate the people. And I think with this kind of project, it's some experimentation, real experimentation. It's not a joke. It's a big project with a lot of money, with a strong political power behind. But it's experimentation. How we could change our relationship with the architecture, how the architecture could be more light, more flexible, more open, more present. You know, if we could control the presence of the architecture, I think we are definitively architect citizen.
예, 제가 그 질문을 이렇게 높이 솟은 눈에 띄는 건물도 있지만 땅으로 이렇게 묻어넣어서 안 보이는 건물도 있는데 보이게 하는 게 너의 전략이냐, 안 보이게 하는 게 너의 전략이냐, 그렇게 제가 물어봤고요. 그 다음에 그 미스터 페로의 대답은 뭐 예술 같은 경우에는 아직도 굉장히 파워풀하고 강하게 남아 있지만 지금 현대 사회에서 건축은 굉장히 소심하고 어떻게 보면 죽어 있다고 말할 수 있습니다. 그래서 이거를 모든 가능성을 우리가 앞으로 활용을 해서 뭐 굉장히 멀티 레벨로 짓건 뭐 아래로 묻건 좀 가능한 모든 그 possibility를 굉장히 플렉서블하게 활용을 해서 새로운 어떤 그런 가능성을 창조해야 되지 않을까라고 말씀을 하셨습니다. Okay, any questions? I think people are so impressed and still thinking about your projects one by one. That there have been too many actually. Yeah, so they're just thinking. All right, Alan.
I'm looking at this image, and it seems to me to embody a paradox. You say that you're using the space to unite the other buildings of the campus in a single entity, but at the same time you've built a canyon which will divide from side to side. How does that work? How does this conceptually, how do you bring together the idea of uniting through space, but then actually you can't walk across there unless you can fly?
In fact, you could make the tour underground, because underneath the staircase you have a big foyer for the theater, and underneath this slope, the ramp, you have some other spaces for exhibition and connecting with a big vitrine on the car park. You see the cars. And also is very interesting because you have two sides, but finally is one word inside. But also, you feel the topography, but each level is connecting with the floor outside, like a ground floor. You know. Okay, you are if you are there, it is the first floor. But if you continue along the gallery, you are there on the more or less like a ground floor, physically, and it is a substance. You know, it's you know, you walk in a volume, not volume, some space, if you want, and with very safe and comfortable point or repère, you know, and I like it because you float. It's like a floating situation, but finally each point is a physical reference, very traditional. All is traditional, but the space is like a garment is around you, you know.
예, 저 2대 ECC 빌딩이 지금 가운데가 갈라졌으면 양쪽으로 갈라져서 넘어갈 수가 없지 않냐. 이거 링크를 끄는 게 아니냐라고 굉장히 어떻게 보면 약간 공격적인 질문을 하셨고요. 그 대답은 이게 어떻게 보면은 가운데 있는 공간이 새로 창조된 거기 때문에 그런 어떤 유용성에 주목할 필요도 있고, 그다음에 두 번째는 그 위아래로 이렇게 수직으로 왔다 갔다 할 수 있는 통로와 더불어 저기 사진에 보시면 이렇게 빛이 쭉 따라가는 그 슬라브를 따라서 그쪽을 따라서 그 갤러리라고 말씀하셨는데 복도를 쭉 따라가면 그 맨 아래층에서만 왔다 갔다 할 수 있는 게 아니라 그 중간층에서 쭉 따라가면은 중간층 계단으로 연결이 되고, 그래서 굉장히 다른 레벨을 이용해서 지상과 커넥션을 만들고 있기 때문에 그런 것은 보완이 될 수 있다. 그리고 마지막으로는 이렇게 그 항상 전통적인 방식이 아닌 그런 것에 좀 우리가 그 새로운 생각을 할 필요가 있다라고 마무리를 해주셨습니다. No further question? Then, okay. We'll get one more. The last one.
Hello, this is Sofia Psara from University College London. Like Alan, I see a paradox, but a different one in this building. Although it is described as something that does not disturb the ground too much because it goes under the ground, I see a certain monumentality in it, and I see an interest in monumentality in your other projects as well. So I wonder how you could describe the relationship between the monument as something that shapes collective values and monumentality as something that is related to scale, a large size. And since you describe an approach like that as something that is taking care of the planet, I wonder how buildings of this size respond to changes of uses, because we know that through history the world's best monuments have been adapted to different uses and different functions.
Sorry, I don't heard all, but about the monumentality, it is the question. The relationship, the monumentality you said.
Yes, I see a certain monumentality in your work, and I wonder how you would describe the work in relation to that, and how this relates to potential changes of uses from the point of view of sustainability.
Yeah. And about the monumentality, I think we have need monumentality, and because and especially in big city, because the monumentality provide a specific urban sense. If we control the presence of this monumentality, and because if I say something about the library in Paris, 100 years ago, 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 is monumental, more or less. If I compare with Seoul, is a toy. But if we build all function above, we lose the chance to provide or to develop a public space. And with the for me, the monumentality could be acceptable if I get a benefit like a citizen. And the benefit is the public space. It's my idea. And this idea is not very clear today. It was very clear during the 19th century, in Europe especially, because we have some street, some piazza, some monumental buildings and statues and so, sculpture and so. Today, the question about the status of the public space is a real question. But we have need some public space. If you consider, for example, some Arab events, they go on the piazza with a name, with a place. And the relationship between the public space and the political power is not innocent. We should assume. We vote and we assume, like a citizen. And I think for us, urban designer, architect, landscaper, and so, we should think again with a contemporary approach about the status of the public space. For example, in Paris, at this moment, the city creating a new quality of a square, Place de la République, the square of the Republic. It's a very famous, historically, square with a lot of people protest and with event after election. It's a very strong place about the history of France. But they develop a flat surface with some bench and with a lot of water and a cafe, with some events, with temporary event. Okay, it's for children. The citizen is not a children, you know. And for me, the quality of the treatment about this public space is very good. It's not the question is not about the design. The question is about the relationship between the public space and the building around and the urban function around and the urban fabric around. And I think the architecture could develop some new, I don't know if it's a good term, but some specific and special relationship between this kind of void public space and the building. And I think for us and for me, it's very important. And in Asia, it's more important because the culture about the public space doesn't exist. And I think we could find some experience in Asia because they are very free. They invest the public space spontaneously. In Europe, we are very rigid. We don't touch the public space. If you are coming on the public space, now the police arrive. The public space is not free in Europe, you know? And I think this kind of reflection and thinking, it's very important to develop some specific quality about the contemporary city, and the name of the contemporary city is the metropolis. Is not the city. The city, the metropolis is not a city. Is another urban object, and we don't know a lot about this new special object, the metropolis.
모뉴멘탈리티에 대한 그 작품과 관련돼서 질문을 하셨고요. 기념비적이라는 거, 뭔가 그 눈에 두드러지는 기념성이라는 게 뭔가 물어보셨고, 그다음에 대답을 하시기를 그 어떤 공공성에 기여를 할 수 있다면 그 어떤 그 기념비적인 게 의미가 있지, 무조건 시각적으로 기념비적으로 만든다고 해서 다 좋은 것은 아니다. 공공의 봉사를 할 때 그것이 비로소 좋은 것이다. 그다음에 그 도시라는 게 뭐 예전에 18세기 그 1800년대와 달라서 어떤 무슨 그 거대한 동상이나 스태츄 말씀을 많이 하셨는데, 어떤 정치에 의해서 좌우되는 그런 어떤 모뉴멘탈리티보다는 어떤 도시적인 즉흥성, 스폰테이니어티라는 말을 계속 하셨어요. 그래서 그 즉흥성에 의해서 자유롭게 사람들이 어떤 시민의 어떤 가치를 표출할 수 있는 그런 것이 어떤 그 굉장히 역동적인 도시를 만들 수 있고, 그런 면에서 그 통제가 된 굉장히 규율에 잡혀 있는 유럽의 도시보다 아시아의 도시가 훨씬 더 자유롭고 자유분방해서 그 점을 굉장히 좋아하신다고 말씀하셨습니다.